Why is collaborative working more common now than it was 5 years ago? Well, the first thing is there's more client-side people who work in digital specific roles. We've got two Pauls we work with, one of whom I was hoping to see, but he's not here today, Digital Services Manager at ETOA. These people are looked at within their businesses as, I think a little bit unfairly, digital oracles. Actually, they're not. They're digital interfaces into a whole world of digital stuff. People tend to be very good at one thing or another. So, for example, Paul McNulty is very good at understanding conversion ratios and that sort of thing, which isn't really Paul Draper's job. So that's kind of, I think it's fair to look at those people as people who can get you stuff rather than people who are going to do things for you. The second thing is we've seen digital becoming much more important for the people that I call generalists. So these are people who perhaps 12, sort of 18, even sort of 3 or 4 years ago, would have seen digital as kind of important, but less important to things like print marketing, general things around sort of operations and that sort of stuff. And two clients we've got who fall into that category are Ted Cadogan from Chatsworth House and Toy Roddy from Stowe House. For Ted, e-ticketing is a massive part of their business now. Not only does it make them a lot of money, it also cuts back on administration. And for Tori, who's in the process of relaunching Stowe House as a tourist attraction, it's a really cost-effective route into market for her. So both of those people we might not have seen a couple of years ago, but we do see a lot more of them now in our offices. In terms of the change for us as a business, it's been enormous. So back in 2010, when we used to do digital projects, typically you'd get a brief over the fence and the client would expect to see something back quite quickly. That's changed. So I'm just bringing up all this stuff now. The biggest change for us is just the physical number of people we have in our offices. We typically expect to see maybe between 5 and 10 people on the client side over the course of a relationship. And it's actually changed the way in which we have our building set up. So we've got more breakout spaces and that sort of thing now, so we can have more conversations about different parts of the project. So if you're working in that way, the first challenge you've got is if you've got more people involved, how do you control cost? And how do you avoid duplication of effort? And my top tip here is to try and get the best and most efficient contribution from every single person you have working on a project. So that's both your internal staff and also external people you're working with. How do you do that? Well, what I like to do is think about how people can contribute in 4 different areas. The first one of those is user experience and design. So in terms of designing the overall solution for the customer. I think that you shouldn't necessarily be looking to completely outsource that, because as business users of systems and people who interact with customers, you're going to have a lot of valuable insights that can make a massive difference to the customer experience that you offer. Typical outputs from this sort of stage from an agency might include, on the left-hand side there, a persona, which basically describes the kind of customer that we're going after and what the website should be doing in order to appeal to them. And then also on the right-hand side, the visual execution of a brand online. I don't think those are things that necessarily have to be done by an agency partner. I think executing a brand online and thinking about a customer is something that you guys as business users can do possibly as effectively as we can as digital suppliers. The second area is the engagement strategy. I think for travel and tourism this is really interesting, because if you went back 5 years or so ago, it's probably unfair, but you maybe could have realistically expected somebody at a senior management level to understand the entire customer experience. I think that's absolutely impossible now within this sector. Your customers expect to have a 24/7 service in terms of being able to get hold of you. They expect the process of working with you to be completely seamless. So they expect to be able to book through a third-party airliner, potentially, buy excursions from somewhere else and buy a hotel from somewhere else, and that entire thing to be a great experience. And also on top of that, you've got the fact that if they don't like something, they can go on social media or on TripAdvisor. And I think because of that, I'd expect, if I was going to be working on a project, to potentially get some support in that area. Because it might be that someone can provide you with some fresh ideas, some fresh impetus around how you can improve the overall customer engagement and make that service a bit more smooth. This is an example from a project we did recently with London Luton Airport, and basically we looked at the entire visitor experience on the day of travel from the point of view of a family. And one of the challenges for Luton Airport, I'm not sure if anyone's flown from there. Has anyone flown from Luton Airport over the last couple of years? Yeah? One of the things that we found out as part of the sort of scoping exercise with them was basically their brand gets slammed all the time online because the travel experience is a bit stressful. You've got to go almost onto the M25 and then come off, park in a car park 3 miles away and get a bus, not knowing whether you're going to get there on time. Not only that, when you've gone through the pain of going through a really cramped security area, you then get into the one bar area and there's only 3 seats in the entire bar where you can see the departure boards and get a beer at the same time. The most stressful situation in the world. So, that's part of the reason why you get people slagging it off online. They're just like, oh, I'm so stressed. Can't believe it. When are they going to improve this? So we basically help them to map that experience. And you can see where that big red dot is there. That basically is where the customers are the most stressed, which is when they're in that bar area and they've got kids and they've got, you know, all this stuff going on and they want a beer and just, so basically what we did was we talked to users in the airport about what would make that better for them. And one of the simplest things we've ever had to do is basically have a flight information search, which then you could pin to your navigation on your mobile phone, which makes it miles easier for them to be able to watch their kids, have a beer, and not be stressed. And that isn't something they'd come up with on their own. That was through collaboration with us and their other partners. The next area is technology. I think going back 5 years or so ago, the technology decision was pretty much made by your supplier. They'd say, yeah, we do this. You go, okay, that's fine, as long as it's cheap. I think now, companies, particularly where you've got high customer expectation, which you do have in this sector, are thinking about technology in much more depth than they were previously. And I think this is a really, really, really difficult thing for you as organisations to buy, because technology suppliers, I think I was chatting to someone earlier on, will tell you that everything that you want ever is available in the system that you're talking to that person about. Actually, you know, it's much better to talk to somebody who's a bit agnostic, as we are, about what the best technology options are for you. This is a different example to your sector, but for Ideal Standard, who are the world's biggest bathroom manufacturer, they were not sure about how they were going to house their data, house customer requests, and publish content. So we talked to them about what a good setup might look like for them. We designed this overall setup, which covers data, publishing, and also outputs into different kinds of devices. And we helped them to understand the value in working like that rather than picking up one massive system. And that worked really well for them. And they've been using that system happily for about 4 or 5 years now. The last area, commercial results. So for some reason, within most forms of marketing, the onus is on the client to prove that the investment they made with the agency or digital supplier in general was successful. What an absolute nightmare. Like, you know, it's really difficult to prove the success of anything within marketing, and even more difficult within digital marketing, because there's so many different touch points. And it's even more difficult for you guys, because particularly if you're in this business of selling, you know, hotel rooms for a leisure stay, for example, you're looking at a very considered purchase there. And also potentially talking about having to attribute some of the success of your marketing to external sites or companies. And I think it's important, if you are working on a project where you're investing significant amounts of money, to ask that partner to help you to interpret and to set the parameters for success before you get going. An example of how we've done that for a few clients is to install screen recording technology, which obviously records the overall session of users, but also gives you, like we were looking at before, a kind of heat map of how the customers engage with a particular page. That, and also good dialogue with organisations about what it's really meaning for them on the ground, is a really useful way of helping everybody justify their existence and get a bigger budget for next year, which is what everybody wants, really. Just in terms of kind of how this works in practice, so with London Luton Airport, I mentioned earlier on, there was us, there was 3 other agencies, one for PR, one for digital marketing, and one for copywriting. All of us had our own specialisms, and we all worked with 7 different integration partners. So there's a lot of different people involved in that project. We didn't use everybody all the time. That would have cost absolutely loads. But we did work really efficiently. Everybody contributed in their own way. And the results there were absolutely fantastic. So we managed to increase conversion rate, increase average order value, and most importantly, increase online revenue. In sort of anecdotal chats with the client, we think we managed to pay back everything, including, you know, the time it took internally and cost of existing suppliers within the first quarter after launch. So I think that's a great example of where collaborative working can really work well. Challenge 2. So, hopefully you guys are starting to see the benefit of working collaboratively and using specialists for the right things. How do you make collaboration more successful as an organisation? My top tip here is to embrace technologies and techniques that allow you to deliver things in bits rather than as one absolutely massive lump. Because if you can do that, it means you can divide things down to individual areas where people can provide specialist support. Two really kind of different examples here. This is a sketch that my mate from the office did, basically which tries to map out an entire customer experience. The post-it notes denote whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. And the main reason for doing this is just to quickly, at a top level, have a clear view of whether the service is currently working or currently failing. On top of that, what we did then was we kind of created individual tasks associated with those pain points for the customer, and we put them into a Trello board. Does anybody use Trello here? Yeah. And basically, you guys all know from using Trello, you put things into a backlog of things to be done, things that are already kind of in production or blocked in this case, things that are in definition stage, and things that are being marked up and are ready eventually to go into test and be built and go live and that sort of stuff. If you're working in a collaborative way, that sort of tool is really useful because it gives you a nice snapshot of where everything is. Whereas something like Basecamp, obviously, which is line by line, very difficult to work out where you are with various bits of work you're working on. Challenge 3, last challenge. How do I get my internal stakeholders to make more valuable contributions? I think this is a really difficult area because particularly if you're the person responsible for budgeting for an external supplier, what you don't want is for that person to come in and do the work of your internal people. And ultimately, or the other thing they can do is they can demotivate your staff by taking all the creative bits away. My top tip here is to work with people who are flexible and to not be too precious over particular parts of a project. This is an example from the project we did with Stowe I mentioned earlier on. Tori, who was the client-side project management person on this project, was very, very, very involved in setting out an overall structure for the site. She was actually dreaming about sitemaps and told us on social media, and we basically kind of collaborated there to make a really good sitemap that really worked for them as an organisation. I've just pulled ETOA up here because this site was a site we did 4 years ago, and at the time Magdalena was marketing director here, and she was adamant that she wanted the site to be basically built around a really strong search navigation and a left-hand navigation pane, because she thought it would be the best way of getting people into content. At the time, we didn't think that might be that modern, we didn't think it would be that appropriate, but actually the design hasn't changed very much since then. I think it was a good decision. And ultimately, although that wasn't our decision, we allowed it to happen by being flexible and helping her to make decisions. So in summary, I think the first thing to say is that collaborative working does make a lot of sense. It allows you to get the right people doing the right sort of jobs for you and ultimately delivering a better quality project. If you are going to bring in skill sets and resources, I'd bring in people that you don't have, or bring in people who can help your team to perform better. Next point is that good suppliers should fit around what you have and not try and hog everything. And the last point, don't let your suppliers steal all the fun bits of the project. You might be able to contribute a lot more than that, than them as a team, so just make sure that they're not hogging all the creative stuff. And that's it. So thank you very much.